Hey, what's happening? Welcome back to The Bald Perspective. On your way in the door, go ahead and touch the like button, hit subscribe if you've never subscribed before, and hit the notification bell so you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk. All right, guys, it's time for us to crack open that very real conversation of who exits first. Does Lamar Jackson leave the Baltimore Ravens first, or does John Harbaugh leave the Baltimore Ravens first? Or, yeah, there's a third option. Do the Baltimore Ravens put the option on the table that both of these guys depart near one another and they hit the reset button? I think it's a real possibility. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to dig into this subject matter. We're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens' current state. We're going to talk about their near future, which is the off season. There'll be free agency talk, there'll be contract talks, there'll be trade talks. But right now, one of these guys are headed for a divorce. You see, in a real relationship, nobody wakes up one morning and just says it's over. There's always been signs and symptoms of a coming departure. For 20 years that I've been working with people in their relationships, it's never an instantaneous thing. It's always a product of some breakdown, patchwork, more breakdown, and more patchwork until the point where the patchwork can no longer sustain the relationship. And that's what we're seeing between Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, and the Ravens. You see, the thumbnail that you saw on your way in is actually a thumbnail that I created all the way back on Monday, long before the Mike Preston article hit print. And in that Mike Preston article, I'm sure you guys have heard people talk about it, or you read it yourself. To summarize it, Mike Preston leans into the idea that the Baltimore Ravens could be in exploration of trading Lamar Jackson. It talked about how John Harbaugh had grown weary of Lamar Jackson. It talked about how Lamar Jackson, again, it kind of sounds like the Nick Wright conversation, how Lamar Jackson basically doesn't do the work to stay ahead of the game. He doesn't do the work to work on his body. And the Ravens have grown tired of his behavior. And then it leaned into how he would love to play in Miami. And I'm not here to defend Lamar Jackson in this particular conversation, right? Because there's a few things you can easily point to that says a lot of the Mike Preston article can be debunked. But here's truth. Any solid journalist has sources that they can plug into and get information. So I won't say that Mike Preston is totally wrong. I won't disagree with him that Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh may not have the best of relationships at this point. I won't say that Lamar Jackson has not grown tired of the Ravens, and maybe the Ravens are growing a little tired of him. But the question now has to be, who is more valuable to this franchise? Is it the quarterback who has put the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs 5 of his 8 seasons or 6 of his 8 seasons? I can't remember. Hold on. Let's just do the numbers. 2018, 2019, 2020. Up until the point where he left in 2022, he had them in the playoff race, and Tyler Huntley ended up playing that playoff game. So let's count that, 23 and 24. So 6 of his 8 seasons in the Baltimore Ravens organization, he has had them in the playoffs. Is that more valuable? Is it an issue that he's been banged up this season? Is it an issue that he's now getting ready to be 29 in January? Does that lessen his value to the franchise? Does that make them not want to introduce a 5-year, $300 million contract, things of that nature? Or is the longstanding head coach, John Harbaugh, is he more valuable? And I think you have to point to results. What have the results said? Right? The results say, and this is clear, the results say that the winning took place when it comes to the connection between John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. It didn't take place until he stepped into the building halfway through the season and took over as the starter in 2018 all the way up through the 2024 season. Let's just get that out of the way. You see, there's enough evidence that says that John Harbaugh was not winning prior to Lamar Jackson walking in the door. 3 non-playoff seasons. That's fact. We can put our finger on it. We can look at that information. We can turn it inside out. It's still going to say the same thing. When Lamar Jackson walked in the door and took over as the starter, the Baltimore Ravens have been making the playoffs. Now, the question has been, the controversy has been, why have the Baltimore Ravens not made a Super Bowl when they've had a 2-time MVP under contract over the last 8 seasons? And there's many things that we can point to. We can point to offensive line play. We can point to wide receiver talent. We can point to a bad defense. We can point to a lot of different things. The fact of the matter is that John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson as a unit are further away today from winning a Super Bowl than they ever have been since this relationship began in 2018. That's a fact. We can debate all of the intricacies, right? We can debate the postseason turnovers by Lamar Jackson. We can debate the postseason decision-making by John Harbaugh, so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, if we're talking Super Bowl, they're not close at this point. And there's a groundswell in the Baltimore Ravens fandom that says it's time for John Harbaugh to go, led by me. But there is a secret segment of the Baltimore Ravens fan base that says, you know what? It's time to move on from Lamar Jackson and let's just hit reset. And if I'm honest with you guys, okay, I'm absolutely on board with John Harbaugh and this whole administration departing. You guys already know that. Hashtag Ravens change. But I'm actually becoming more okay with a Lamar Jackson trade, and here's why. When I look at the future of the Baltimore Ravens, meaning what we have in-house and what we've done through the draft, I'm not excited about a retaining of Lamar Jackson if the EDC draft picking doesn't change also. That's why it requires a total sweep. So if EDC remains but John Harbaugh departs, I'm still okay with that Lamar Jackson trade. If EDC and John Harbaugh depart and we get a whole new administration, I'm okay with a Lamar Jackson trade. Why? Because you know, with a new administration, they typically like to clean house and get their quarterback who they select in-house. I think all of these things in truth are on the table. This is not me saying that Lamar Jackson is no longer valuable. This is not me saying he's no longer good. He's no longer great. He's had a banged up season, and we understand when you play with injuries, you don't play as well. That's just the truth. And on top of that, having one of the worst offensive lines in the league, undeniable. But if the Ravens as a organization, starting with Steve Bisciotti, wants to hit a total reset, let's do it. Let's not do a partial reset. Let's not trade Lamar Jackson and keep EDC and John Harbaugh. That doesn't make sense. If we're going to do a total reset, let's get rid of everybody. And then let's fall down into the doldrums of the NFL until we rebuild something foundational. But if we're keeping Lamar Jackson, which I'm in favor of, then the administration has to change, because we don't have much evidence that drafting talent is working out. And we don't have much evidence that free agency is working out either. And so here we are with a situation where one of these guys have to exit this season. I'm not talking about down in the future. I'm not talking about let's give it another go in 2026 and then see what happens in 2027 offseason. I'm talking about 2026. This has to happen. One of these guys have to go. I'm in favor of John Harbaugh going. Absolutely. I'm in favor of EDC going. Absolutely. But I don't want to see a Lamar Jackson trade and we retain the same administration. If we're going to hit the reset button and blow it all up, let's do it. Let's do it. But let's not do this half behind stuff where we are doing patchwork once again. Because we have too many evidences that this coaching isn't working. The Baltimore Ravens have had one of the worst defenses over the last 2 seasons after letting go of Mike McDonald. Now, here's a truth. Now, they didn't really let him go. He moved to a better opportunity, I guess. But that's who should have been the Baltimore Ravens' next head coach. That's who should have been. But they missed that boat. Look what he's doing out there with Sam Darnold in Seattle. Look what he's doing with that defense. That's what he could have been doing and should have been doing in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. But because we always patching things together. Zach Orr was a patchwork. He was a novice. He didn't have any DC experience. I'm not saying he's not a good dude. I'm not saying he can't coach linebackers. But this experiment at DC has not been good. But who is that directly connected to? A John Harbaugh decision. You can't start off 2 seasons in a row with having the worst defense in the league and keep your job for 2 complete seasons. You can't have an offense with the firepower of Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and a really good tight end room and fall into offensive lulls where you can't move the ball. That doesn't make sense. But all of these things are working together. The roster construction, the coaching of said roster, the coaching decisions, the selection of the coaches, all of that is connected to this administration. And so I'm saying one or the other. Either you move on from both Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh and EDC and start something brand new, or you move on from the administration and see what you can do building around Lamar Jackson moving forward. But one of these things must happen in 2026. This is a 2-part video, so you guys stay around. It'll come out Sunday or Monday, the part 2 of why, even beyond the coaching decisions, what really says it's time for a divorce between Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. If you've been around this long, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe if you've never subscribed. And until next time, I'm out.